everyone with an interest in NASH, or more broadly, fatty liver disease. Surf's Up, Season 4, Episode 21 of Surfing the NASH Tsunami. Our first preview episode for the EASL Congress 2023 starts now.
This week on Surfing the NASH Tsunami.
This is the best meeting, the strongest meeting that has ever been undertaken if you're interested in fatty liver diseases or NASH.
EASL Congress is really the place where we, I think, shape the future of NAFLD therapy.
It's also very important not just to raise awareness, but to really start education already at a very young age. And not only make people aware about liver disease, but also creating enthusiasm for people that later on, kids that later on might become our colleagues.
I'm looking to take away the practical parts of what we can do now to help our patients feel, think and function with any of the diseases.
I feel a lot of so what and now what can come out of this meeting.
Every week, a global community of fatty liver disease stakeholders comes together to explore the most important challenges in diagnosing, treating, and developing medications for patients with fatty liver diseases. Join hepatology researcher and key opinion leader Professor Jörn Schattenberg, liver wellness advocate Louise Campbell, pricing and forecasting guru Roger Green, and their guests, EASL Vice-Secretary Aleksander Krag and Education Councillor Sven Francque, as they preview next month's 2023 EASL Congress on Surfing the NASH Tsunami.
This is a great episode for us. We look forward every year to the major conferences, and because our coverage of EASL usually starts about a month in advance and has a couple of preview episodes in it, and then episodes at the Congress, and then post episodes. And this is the first of those. So before I talk to our guest, let me say good evening to Jörn, who's doing double duty tonight. He's joining me for this, and then for half an hour extra so that's part of another episode in June, right when we get done. Jörn, how are you this evening?
I'm great, thank you. Had a great weekend, and I was just joking with Sven earlier. We had the European Song Contest. Germany never gets a vote. They always finish up last. Not sure where that is, but otherwise it was good.
And then Louise is with us still in Australia, so she's in a very, very dark room in Perth. Louise, how are you this evening besides tired?
Very well, thank you very much. I'm bright and breezy. Looking forward to listening to what the guys have to say about the upcoming conference.
And me as well. And then the guest we have with us, who you folks are familiar with from before, is Sven Francque, who's Education Councillor for EASL and was with us for a couple of times, I think, last year at NAFLD Summit, maybe one or two other times. Sven, how are you doing today?
I'm very fine, thank you, Roger.
And the guest that we have who you've not met is the Vice-Secretary of the EASL, Aleksander Krag. Aleksander, how are you this evening?
Very good, thank you, and thank you for inviting me.
Well, thank you for agreeing to participate. It's a great event every year, and this is an episode we really like. So why don't we do this? Since you've not been on the podcast before, please take a minute or two and just tell people a little bit about your work history, how you became interested in hepatology, and what you do now. And then when you're done, I will ask you to share with our audience one thing they might not guess about you if you didn't tell them. And I'll come back to that question when we need to. The floor is yours, my friend. Go ahead.
Thank you. I'll try to do my best. So I'm a clinical hepatologist. I have to admit it's a bit embarrassing. I started out actually with a bit of interest in GI, but quickly learned that the liver was more exciting, and particularly also the research and the patients, more variation, I think more challenges, and that sort of just inspired me. And then I went down the track there with a clinical research. I did a PhD, did my specialty training. But then I think a big game changer for me was internationalization. First time I got my abstract accepted for EASL, it was just, what we call it, some of these moments, defining moments. Suddenly I was there among equally minded people from all over the world. Wasn't that just amazing? And then I kept doing that, and I grew my network and my attachment to this. So I guess I feel part of the liver family, the international, the global liver family. And that has sort of been driving me. And then here in more recent years, then you become more of a leader. And then it's actually your time to inspire the next generation of hepatologists to go do best in clinics, best in patient care, but it's all about what is really driving that great research, because we always need more knowledge. And there I have a very privileged position where I am in the hospital and university to be able to do that. So that I'm very happy with and proud of. And then 2 years ago, I had the opportunity to join the EASL governing board, and then I could do even more because then suddenly you can help run the best medical society, probably the best medical society in the world. And now from June on, then I'll have 2 years as Secretary General, and I look very much forward to that, to do more thing with all the big stakeholders around. So it's not just research, we have these great interactions with you guys, with all the patients organizations, with the industry, with all those stakeholders who basically want the same as we want, a future with better liver care. So that I could talk along about that because I love what I do.
I have to tell you, your voice crackles with passion. It's very impressive. You can hear it.
So you want a secret about me? I guess there are a bunch of secrets. You might have asked my wife instead, but I want a secret. One fun fact, etc. is actually most of my life I've always been attracted to mountains. There are many things where mountains are inspiring. It makes you small, a little humble, and that's healthy. But then I climb mountains, and what mountains do to you when you're at a wall is that actually heals you a bit, because it brings your mind and your soul and your body closer to each other. Normally what we do, you're not necessarily physically where you're mentally. But if you are 100 meters off a wall, I can assure you, then you are physically where you're mentally. And if not, you're in trouble.
I've never had that experience. I have had the opposite, which is until my ears wouldn't let me anymore, I was a scuba diver. So I would go maybe 30, 40, 50 yards down a wall. And then you have to be very careful of your breathing and your oxygen. And if you're not completely present, it doesn't end well. That's a fantastic thing. And I believe you are the first climber as compared to people who've hiked large mountains. But I think you're the first person who's been on a wall and talked about it to do this podcast yet. So congratulations. We're 189 episodes in, and you're unique in one more way than you knew before that.
He's clearly gained more of my recognition too, Aleksander. That's a truly exciting story. Beyond the passion that you bring to research in EASL, of course. That's great.
Yeah, it is. It's fantastic. So with that, why don't we just start with our usual weekly icebreaker. One good thing, personal or professional, that's happened in the past week or looking forward to in the next week, if you're a guest, that you'd like to share with us. Brave one, go first.
Let me start because I haven't said something for a while. I mentioned my downside was probably 0 points for Germany in many competitions at ESC. But on the up and side, I just fixed a new set of bikes for my 8-year-old, and she started to bicycle. So we got a new bike, and she's even faster now. It's almost that I can't run with her anymore. So that'll be fun. You'll see me chasing a 8-year-old on the road.
Boy, that sounds like fun. No, it doesn't. Next.
Oh, I'll jump in next. As you know, I'm in Perth, so last week I started rowing, and I don't row normally, so a skiff boat. So it's not one of those narrow boats that you see on the Thames or the competition rowers. It's more an old fishing boat from Scotland with a set of, shall I say, octogenarians. So I'm the youngest in the boat at the moment.
Is this like a dragon boat kind of thing, Louise?
No, it's rowing. It's just one oar, and there's 5 of us in the boat with the steer and cox, but it was lovely, and the Swan River was flat calm, and it was 7 o'clock in the morning, so it gets me out of bed early, that's all I can say. But it was a new experience and a very good exercise, so something I hope to continue here. So that was a nice way to start last Friday.
So the ever-compassionate Professor Schattenberg and myself hope that you don't do that at 7 a.m. on Tuesday mornings when you're doing podcasts with us until 3 in the morning on Tuesday. I hope you're not getting out of bed in 4 hours after you finish this to go do it again, is I guess what I'm saying.
No, I've got a clinic somewhere else, so I will be getting up in about 4 hours, but yes.
Okay. My people are very good at guilt. I feel it. Sven or Aleksander, why don't one of you go ahead?
I can go. So this is actually something with what we do, but I'm away off to the Turkish Association for the Study of the Liver's meeting. So we're working and have great colleagues all over the world, and then they invited me, and I'll go there and actually look very much forward. I've never been there, and I think we're eager at EASL also to bridge better relation and closer collaborations with the Turkish Society, which is really, really nice people. So look very much forward to that.
Excellent. And Sven?
Yeah, and I will counterbalance Jörn's experience with the Eurovision Song Contest because Belgium did quite well. We ended up 7th, so this is also always a family moment in the year. So we had a very nice evening, and also the result was encouraging. So really the opposite. And for the rest, I'm looking forward to a long weekend at the seaside. So the future is bright.
Very nice. So I guess my Eurovision comment is that my wife is a fan of Sweden because she's a fan of ABBA, who actually got their start as you know, winning Eurovision 50 years ago. We all know that now because Sweden won it again this time. So she's been celebrating that, and because I am Jewish and have a natural affinity for Israel, the Israelis finished third. So in our house, we thought we had a really good Eurovision this year. I will leave it at that because, as I've noted, I refuse to talk about football anymore. So with that, why don't we dive into our episode at the end of next month? I think Louise is still going to be in Australia or back in Australia, but the rest of us will all be in Vienna for the 2023 EASL Congress. Has it always been EASL Congress, or I thought it used to be just called?
No, we changed the name because we love the name EASL. So we felt, how can we have the best liver meeting in the world and not have our own name in the name of the meeting? So then we changed it back to EASL Congress.
That sounds appropriate. It's EASL's Congress. So that makes sense. First of all, just to get started, to Sven and Aleksander first and the rest of us, can you tell our listeners one thing in particular about this meeting that makes you excited this year?
You cannot get one thing there. You have no idea what's coming. This is the best meeting, the strongest meeting that ever been undertaken if you're interested in fatty liver diseases or NASH. It has never been more exciting. The program have never been wider. You know, every single day there are numerous things. So if your expectations are high, then set them higher. And then you'll probably be ready to consume what we got for you guys. So it's difficult, I think, because with the layers we have now, because it's really a priority to EASL. So it's a big priority. We have all these developments. We have massive number of really high quality research, both from the industry side, with launch of phase 3 trials, numerous hundreds of abstracts. We got a big release of the nomenclature, etc. You name it. We even have outreach things where we go out and have events where we do liver screening in the streets, and we go to schools to learn them about healthy foods in the community. So you just ask what you want, and I can direct you to something where you will experience something you probably not had felt at that level before. So you cannot give you one thing.
Well, I will make a note to call back to the Congress and ask to go to one of your on-site healthy liver screenings or teaching in the schools, because I've not been to that as part of a Congress before. That sounds great.
You're most welcome.
Sven?
Yeah, I can only echo that. It's an incredible program, and we shortened it a little compared to previous editions. It's one day less, but the program is extremely rich, and as Aleksander already said, it's even outside the Congress venue that there are activities. But we also have the activities for the nurses, for the patients, the industry, the science. It's really, there's something for everybody there, and the level of the program, the quality is really very, very high. So I'm very excited, very looking forward. If I compare it to previous editions and other meetings, this is a very, very attractive program.
Well, so with all respect to my American patriots, this is my favorite meeting. So if in fact it's 2 or 3 levels above last year, I can't even imagine, but I'm incredibly excited. Jörn, anything in particular before we dive in greater detail about this meeting, the agenda, the site, anything else that struck you as particularly enticing?
Yeah, of course, there are personal highlights. I was invited by EASL as a chair and 2 sessions. One I'll be giving with Elisabetta on lean NAFLD. This is going to be very exciting to me because lean NAFLD is still something that I think can be discussed very controversially, either as a set of patients being summarized there, rightfully so or not. So this is a session we'll be discussing in a Meet the Experts context, a special session EASL has, and that's the personal highlight. We have a number of posters. I'll be presenting, of course, again, those are personal highlights, but I'm really looking forward to the late-breaking session this year. There's going to be novel compounds in phase 3 results being presented for the first time. We see some press releases, but EASL Congress is really the place where we, I think, shape the future of NAFLD therapy, and that, for that reason, I think a lot of people will come and attend.
Okay, so first of all, that's great. A podcast note for listeners. If you want, we did an episode on lean NASH last summer based on the review paper that Mazen Noureddin and Michelle Long published. I think it was July of 23. I don't remember the episode number off the top of my head, but if you want to go back and listen to that so that you're prepared to hear all about Jörn's session, or if you're going to be at the meeting to go to that session, sounds like a fun thing to do. That's great, Jörn. Thank you so much. Louise, what's going to get you up in the middle of the night, if anything?
Actually, I have to be in London for a big family event. That's why I will be watching it virtually, but getting up early in the morning, given the patient and advocate session is first on the agenda on the Wednesday, but that's a full day also of, as Sven hinted, the nurses and allied health professionals, Aleksander there. So we've gone from strength to strength in that. I think it's 11 years now since we first introduced that to the Congress. So it's a massive part of it and the strength of that. So I'm looking forward to some of that. I've sort of picked Jörn's session that he was just discussing and some of the other sessions topics, obviously, and I'm sure the guy's going to elaborate on that. So I'm quite excited to see what the agenda's doing as I dip in and out through the 4 days.
Also look out for all these interactive things. I think there we learn that we want it more interactive. We want to remove the distance between the experts and the organizers and those who come to consume, to learn, to interact, to engage there. So from all these high-level things, there are these also with all the hands-on thing. How do we actually do a fibroscan? Discuss with the experts, etc., etc. So all these things, look out for them. But also keep an eye on the EASL Studio, because we also want to challenge ourselves. And there, this, just like you do it now, but I think I'm even tougher than you, Roger, when I'm moderating, you know? So if I have Jörn in, I'll not let, or Sven, I'll not let them so easily get off the hook, you know? But I think there the studio format is super complementary to what we do, because there we can be a little different, you know? Normally we like the slides, we like the figures, we like the p-values, but what's underneath it? How do we actually translate into what does this mean for the patients? What does this mean in the real world, etc.? And there I think this is also a format I think we're very proud of, and it can really bring some added value to how we communicate science, education, awareness, and get closer to our overall mission here of doing what we do.
Yeah, we completely agree. I thought EASL Studio last year was fantastic, and I actually got to watch a bunch of it, even though we were doing episodes, and I was leaving the meeting early because I had to get home for a personal commitment on Sunday. But I take your point.
We actually have 2 EASL Studios during the conference around fatty liver diseases. So we have one on where we discuss new treatments, healthcare pathways, and also have the industry and those who actually develop the drugs. And then we have a whole one dedicated to part of the launch of the new nomenclature. So I have the privilege actually to moderate it. And even I like these people, I'll not make them an easy time. We need to ask them, why is this so important? How will this actually improve patients' care, defining disease in a new way? I'm sure it will. So we need to learn that. And how do we adopt that? What will it mean for, what should I call my patients' diseases now? How do I convey that? I look forward to discussing with them, I can assure you.
That could be a really fascinating discussion depending upon exactly how far you want to take it and who you want to invite to ask questions.
You just let me know what questions you want to ask. I will promise to bring them on, you know.
We'll do that, and I have some moderately strong opinions on this, but we've had guests, for example, last week who got even stronger opinions than I do. So I will ask her what questions she would like to see in the studio. This is Donna we're talking about, Donna Cryer. I think I'm most excited about the medications and the non-invasive tests. This is not a challenging comment, Aleksander, but for years we've been poised to deal with 2 things, which is drugs that could actually be prescribed to NASH patients is one, and the OCA PDUFA date is right before the Congress, and I know the resmetirom phase 3 data is the first presentation, first general session, if I remember correctly.
It's in the general session, yes.
That'll be an exciting event as well, and then a lot of discussion on non-invasive tests, because the 2 things we need really to move patient treatment forward might not be a name change, although that might not be a bad thing, but are drugs and user-friendly tests. By user-friendly, I mean both friendly to the patient and to the physician. So I feel like we're going to hear a tremendous amount about advances on both those fronts this year. And to the degree that the studio and our podcasts and other things can help get past the what that people are presenting, and to the 2 questions that matter, one of which is so what, why does it matter, and then now what? So now that we've got this, what do we do next? What do we know next? I feel a lot of so what and now what can come out of this meeting.
No, exactly, and that's also why we need to come together as all the global stakeholders. So yes, we have a lot of resources in the medical societies, but of course we cannot do it alone. We should not do it alone. Everybody's voices counts here. So the only thing we should not do is we should understand that this is in a long-term thing about improving patient care. So instead of trying to fight above the consensus for a name or whatever, no, that's well, what does it actually mean? How can we use this? Why is this actually a very, very good idea that will speed many, many things up? And I think they're back also to what you say, what are the most important now, because the drugs will not come out until a few years. So what is it, the barriers today? I think that's the healthcare pathways. Is the healthcare system really ready to that? Do we know how to use it? Do we know how to find the patients? How's the awareness? And that I want to flag on other events that we traditionally don't have that much interest about when we do that, but it's super important. So that's about the public health. So EASL is also taking initiatives. Actually, next week, we will have a big event during the World Health Assembly. World Health Assembly is where it's decided what WHO is doing, and EASL is then called on all our friends in the medical societies, but also lead health ministers from a number of countries, etc., to come together to say, how do we actually battle fatty liver disease as a global public health threat? How do we get get it into global policies. And this is a work, again, if we want our governments to change their policies, it's a big deal if WASO actually recommends it. And as it is now, WASO don't even recognize fatty liver disease as a non-communicable disease. So this is worth fighting for. Not we're fighting, we're collaborating with WHO on that. So there are bigger issues than that can really. And another thing I also want you to look out for is a new initiative from EASL, Healthy Livers, Healthy Lives. Again, how can global stakeholders come together, unite? And there is just actually coming publications out from that. Jörn and Sven, you're also part of this, very key parts of driving this, because that is the key research agenda. And again, instead of finding out where we're different, no, find out what's important to do and do it and agree on the direction and forget the rest, because that will just derail the big thing we're all looking for.
And it's so exciting to see there's so many aspects to this, Aleksander, and thanks for highlighting this. I think the WHO event where EASL is participating is tremendously important to move the field forward and get the recognition outside of expert hepatologists arena. Totally aligned with you here. You know, the other thing, it fits well with the nomenclature where we're discussing how to best include everyone and not exclude certain people or parts. And therefore, I think EASL, and it manifests on the EASL Congress, is really a driving force in the field here.
First of all, Aleksander, that's a laundry list. You know, that's a lot of items, and each important, each exciting.
You know, it's long days. This is not the days you should sleep much. This is the days you should really use every single hour of the day to learn, to engage, to enjoy.
We agree. And anyone who knows me, and Louise can testify to this, knows that jet lag kills me. And I'm actually coming over 2 days early so I can get caught up before the meeting. Louise has been known to have to poke me in the ribs on a couple of occasions at meetings to make sure I didn't nod off in my seat. Sometimes successfully, sometimes not. So I'm actually coming over 2 days early so that I can be adjusted to the time before the event starts, because I'm so excited about it. Sven, as a education counselor, what role does one play? Do you play? And where do you think the best educational opportunities are here specifically, either specific topics or specific modes of education that Aleksander might not have mentioned yet, or to repeat some things that he did and explain why you think they're important?
Yeah, it depends a little bit on how narrow or how broad you define education, but there are a lot of initiatives more specifically on education. You have the postgraduate course, which is on NAFLD, by the way, and linked with cancer. So it's a whole day of really high-level talks on the link between NAFLD and hepatocellular carcinoma, something that we do not quite well understand. So that's already a very intense day and full educational event. You have the basic science seminar, which is on the liver communicating with the rest of the body. And then throughout the program, you have a lot of different sessions that are in part educational, if you want. Aleksander already also mentioned the skills labs on ultrasound, endoscopy. So there's a lot going on. You have the state-of-the-art lectures, you have the media expert sessions, all educational events. So it's really a play-out of initiatives, and you can pick up what is the most relevant for you. But that's one of the many missions of EASL to invest in high-level education for the broad community. It's not just for us as expert hepatologists. It's not just for physicians. We also have educational events for nurses. We have the initiatives with the patients and the people living with liver disease. We have those outreaches in the schools. We are going to school the day before the real EASL Congress. There's an initiative in one of the schools in Vienna. So that's also very important, not just to raise awareness, but to really start education already at a very young age, and not only make people aware about liver disease, but also creating enthusiasm for people that later on, kids that later on might become our colleagues. So it's almost starting in the crowd.
What percentage of the people who attend this meeting do it virtually as compared to on-site?
I think it's actually interesting, the development there, because, you know, COVID, it was more or less, well, there was nothing on site, but now it's actually moving a little bit back, that people tend to be more and more on site. And I think back to the learning that what happens there is magic that you cannot get on a screen. You don't meet with people. We don't engage. It's also important for all, but all the hands-on thing. And I think we also, to be honest, reinvented the medical convention here, because we learned that, okay, what you can do, what you're doing here, we don't need to copy that because that you get elsewhere. But how can you deliver something something that can only get on site. That's what we should focus on and doing, I think, more and more, and doing that in a more and more sophisticated, interactive way, and create this environment where people can really, because that's what we need in the world, that people actually meet, they learn, they discuss, they don't start to be skeptic, they actually listen and try to understand why all the other colleagues, they're also trying to do their best. And when these people then learn to interact and get together, then we can really make changes.
I asked about virtual for a second, I'll come back to it. And I think your answer is excellent. Nothing replaces being there. We talk about that for every major meeting, the ones that we get to in person and some of the ones that we don't. Nothing replaces the interactions. Nothing replaces the conversations. Nothing replaces, frankly, the energy level. And being around the hundreds, depending on the meeting, or thousands of people who love these topics and who are really passionate about them, you can't replace that. I couldn't agree with you more. I'll come back to virtual in a second, but I'll ask the same question a different way. So if you were advising a recently minted transplant hepatologist at their first EASL Congress, and you had to give them a list of 3 things they can't miss, and yeah, now I'm saying 3, not 10, 3. What are they? What are the 3 can't miss things that are going on in this meeting? Let's say right now, within a couple of years, into transplant hepatology?
I think, again, if there's the immediate excitement, but what is important for you in the long run? And I think that's the network. That's part of feeling that you're part of something. And I guess if you're an inspiring person, I think some of the things we have super much success with is these meet the experts. This kind where you are 2 meters away from the best stars in the world who wrote or driven the most important trial that changed clinical practice, even wrote your textbooks, whatever. That, I think, is really, really valuable. And then I think also going to exactly what you're interested in, because there's so many parallel sessions. Again, allow yourself to be a little nerdy there. And I think also then to see feel that this vibrant atmosphere. I think the opening ceremony in EASL is always a big celebration. That's just like New Year, we fire all the guns, show all the things. So I think this is there. My sense is I feel I'm part of something big when this happens.
Sven, up to 3 things that you think I really can't miss. Let's use a different audience this time, okay? Let's talk this time about students.
I think for students, they should have a look at the skills labs, what the opportunities are there. I think that's already a very, very important one. Of course, for a student, I think a postgraduate course is a good starting point. You see all the experts summarizing talks about an important topic, so I think that's also very exciting. I remember my first EASL and postgraduate course where I was really impressed by all that knowledge that in a very concentrated way came into my direction. And then I think it's good even for a student to go to one of the abstract sessions, pick out one topic to see how it is, the contrast with the postgraduate course, which is really the synthesis of what is known by the expert, but then also get a hint of how research is ongoing, where the very new things are, how those discussions go, what is going on in research, not for all the details of what is told there, but just to get the flavor of research in hepatology. And I think if you have those 3, then that must be an amazing experience for a student.
Fantastic. So let me do this. I have several more questions, but let me turn to Louise and Jörn first and ask you folks what you'd like to know. Louise, since you're good enough to get up at this hour, you get first dibs. What would you like to ask these folks about the meeting?
How did they get such breadth in it this time and in a more condensed 4 days? I think that has great challenges. I think the one bit about virtual is that I can jump very quickly to some of those meetings, which I can never do in person because you always get distracted and you meet some people along the way. And I'm always afraid of missing the bits that I really wanted. But the challenge that you had in doing the allied health professionals, getting more in there this year than you've done before, and that virtual and that you can't get. But how did you manage to get all of that in within the 4 days? Because it seems to create numerous challenges that you've sort of overcome.
The first thing is that, of course, there's an incredible team behind it to organize all that. And being now on the governing board, I can see it a little bit from the inside, and I'm really impressed about the team and their enthusiasm and their professionalism to organize that. Of course, it's a challenge to compose such a program with all these parallel activities and sessions. But on the other hand, you also have the possibility to record everything, and you can have a maximum profit by being there and going to the sessions, and as you say, have the interaction interaction with people that you meet. And you can always look back at sessions that you were not able to attend at the time that it was really going on, but you can look back later on. So those 4 days will be very heavily stuffed with a lot of sessions, but also with a lot of interaction. And then the work will not be over when the Congress is over, because you will need some time to look at all the sessions that you have missed afterwards. So it's a rich basket, and you have to pick what you like. But it's a challenge to organize it, but there's a great team behind it.
And I guess also advice here, because of course it is super packed, it's super dense, there's a lot of parallel things, and you say that's the good thing about the recordings there. But also then maybe advise that it's good to plan a little bit, that you actually have looked quite a lot into the program and all these things, so you have a pretty good idea what you want to see, or certainly what you don't want to miss out on, and sign up for some of these notes. For instance, they meet the experts, there's a limited number. Different of these activities, it's good to be fast and make sure that you get exactly what you came for.
So, Aleksander, thanks. That's a great lead into our second preview episode, which will happen the week before, after the abstracts have been released, where we will have a group of people come on and talk about the specific presentations or posters that they think are most important in the meeting. Jörn, question from you or thought?
Well, I guess my very personal thought to Aleksander is, I know you must be involved in almost every session. Is there anything that you will visit from your scientific interest, anything that you're looking forward to as a scientist? And this can be, maybe you're not able to because you have to run a session at that time.
I have several things. I love the presentations. I love the questions. But one benefit I actually have from having all the work here in the governing board is that actually I already read all the abstracts. So that brings me a little bit that as if you're in the board, being in the board is just like running a restaurant. So Sven and I, we're chefs. And then we invite 7,000 people for a party. And we take 1 year to prepare that party. So the pleasure of the chefs is actually to see all the guests really enjoying. So we will be pretty busy there with all kinds of meetings. And you know what? The way we want to see it is basically, this is not a scientific event. It's not not just a scientific, not an educational event. It's not a networking. It's all of these things and a much more. I think you should consider the EASL Congress as a global marketplace. So if you're interested in NAFL, NASH, fatty liver disease, whatever is around there, then we want to make it attractive for everybody in the world who has any stake in this to be there. And that also involves all our different companies, exhibitors, etc. Because that's also where they talk with their different stakeholders. And a development I also really love that we can see that the more and more patient groups and organization, advocacy group, whatever, they are joining. And we have good meetings with them also in the leadership to learn from each other. And they are becoming stronger and stronger. And I think Louise already also alluded to it. The nurses and allied healthcare professional tracks is also super good. And you can see the level of the abstracts coming in that session is also really, really, really nice.
I'll just comment on Aleksander's there and the allied nurses, but also advice for physicians or your juniors or your new ones. There's some sessions in the allied health. Don't ignore it because it's allied health. There are some very good sessions on health literacy that we don't just need to know as nurses, but we really do need to appreciate as physicians, as experts, how our patients and how people understand us and our language. We had to re-educate people on the word cirrhosis because it was in their letters for 10 years and they still didn't know what it meant. So really drilling down into some of the sessions and revisiting them if they're recorded on allied health. It's not allied health. These are fundamental things that help every physician, whether or not it's nutrition, whether it's sarcopenia, whether it's strength. These are things that help our patients get better. If we are just focusing them on them in the allied health professionals, but they're not to be missed because it's under the label of allied health. And I think there are some very exciting, beneficial sessions for all physicians and surgeons within those sessions.
So, Louise, what you said just struck a chord with me, which is that one of the reasons this podcast ever made it past 4 episodes which was the original plan, was at the end of episode 3, we got a letter from somebody in Western Canada who had just been diagnosed with cirrhosis and wrote they'd never had a drink in their life. Are they going to die? And that was the whole letter. So what that bespeaks about what the patient didn't understand about cirrhosis, what the doctor didn't teach the patient about cirrhosis, and the lack of ability to give that patient a course of action in terms of the patient understood, was, I thought, the clearest statement about health literacy in NASH that I've ever had. And frankly, it's one of the reasons that we kept this podcast going. You hear to that, Aleksander, you were going to say something. I'm sorry, I jumped in.
I just want to bring something to it, because the way way we should see these meetings, and I say we take a year organizing them, and we're happy to do that. But I think it is a splash, but it's also, it works at so many levels. So I also just want to bring your attention for all of those who are active on various social media, because above or below, around everything we do, there's this massive interaction. So please, whatever you see or hear, share, because then you can learn, you can inspire people all over the place. And I think last year in the EASL Congress on Twitter alone, we had 55 million impressions on the hashtag. So this way of commenting, sharing, okay, this is new, this is okay, we need to change how we deal with this patient, or this my biomarker is better than this, or whatever. So I think that's again an advice or suggestions. And if you're not there, then you don't need to tweet yourself, but just following what's going on can be really entertaining.
Point well taken. 55 million, huh? That's a lot.
We want to beat it this year, I think.
If you put one of those thermometers that they use for fundraising, so you can track by the day how many you've got, you can hold one more celebration when you break 55 million. A personal comment about something I love about the major meetings are the posters, the late breaker posters and the posters of distinction. You get to see the best and most exciting work that didn't make it to presentation, but what you get to do is actually talk with a researcher at as much length as you can about what, why, what does it pretend, what did you learn that isn't in this poster? And I've found those to be some of my most rewarding and fascinating conversations at the event. I don't know how anybody else feels about that, but I've loved that stuff.
No, and I think you're absolutely right. And if we look at the selection, it's a very tough selection, and only a fraction of the excellent research that is submitted can be presented as an oral presentation. So those high-level posters are very important. And we have the small poster sessions, but also the poster tours, just to have that interaction with those mostly young researchers on their research. It's a very important element also. And also for those young researchers, it's very important to have that interaction with the attendees of the Congress. So you're absolutely right. It's also one of the things we shouldn't miss.
Sven is flattering me. I have a number of posters. I'm considered young. I think the important message is it's not enough speaking slots for all the excellent science. That's how I view it. And I agree, Roger. If you move to the posters, the people took all the work to prepare this and actually get into the discussion. This is really about the exchange in the meeting. And I'm looking forward to it.
I also very much agree with this poster thing. And if I look back, many of these I today do research with, who are my friends, been in it for a long time, I met them with my poster or with their posters. So that's exactly an amazing space where you can actually discuss, and it's less, I guess the barrier is much lower than standing in a big room and going to the mic. So I think that's a really good suggestion to go there, discuss and exchange and conference.
So now let's go to the virtual conference, because at least 2/3 of this audience will not be there in person. If you were virtual, you have some benefits and you have a lot of drawbacks. But if one were in the virtual audience, what are the moments you would suggest they definitely do not miss if they're not in the room? So they don't get the benefit of being there, but they do get the benefit of learning and being exposed to thought. Where do you think the most power lies for people who are attending virtually?
I don't know. I guess if you're virtual, you probably prepare well, and then you nail directly down to what you want to see. So I think that people will not miss the sessions, the special session. If they're interested in the different SSC of diagnostics and NITs, etc., they go for that. But what I think you should not miss out on, if you are an online attendee, that is actually the general sessions and the opening ceremony. Some of these things where we actually try to communicate where is this big ecosystem of global hepatology moving, if you're interested. That's what we're trying to convey, at least in the opening session, where you also recognize some of those who actually built the ground we stand on today. And I think that's again important. That's why we do these prizes. And again, in the general session, I think also exposing you a little bit, again, most of us are hepatologists. We have our interest areas, but in general, let's say we do rounds or we ask you whatever, we see all kinds of patients. So being a little open to see also the things outside your specific areas of interest.
And then the studios, of course, they are of course open to everybody, but the studios, they give you also a flavor of the discussions at the meeting. Besides indeed the program or the elements of the program you pick out for your own interest.
And for my colleagues in the States who will be in the States, just a reminder that you can catch up on these things at any point in the conference, so you don't have to necessarily be awake and compos mentis for the opening ceremony in order to see the opening ceremony, say, when you wake up. if you don't choose to wake up at 4 a.m. And by the way, to commend you folks as 7,000 chefs, given what a good thing caffeine is for people with for people's livers, that you've put together a schedule that's going to have us all running on more caffeine than we know what to do with. I think that was impressive, if not necessarily designed benefit for all of our livers. So with that, Jörn and Louise, any more questions you folks have right now?
I think Sven and Aleksander painted a perfect picture of what's going to be a very exciting meeting across a number of topics, in particular on non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. So no more questions, but just very excited to get to the EASL Congress.
Yeah. I'm liking the broad breadth of public health that's in it this year. I think there's a state-of-the-art lecture on the EASL Lancet, but there's also some other sessions about public health and how we look for liver ill health. I suppose some of the language is changing. Liver health rather than just liver disease, which is a fraction of the liver health issue that we pose globally, which was commented on earlier with the WHO. So I'm interested to see where we go with that dialogue, because we have to open it out of disease into more health, personally.
I think that's a great point. If you come out of industry, which is where about a little better than half of this audience is, and you're not attending in person, and you only go to presentations of research for drugs or diagnostics that will directly affect what you see as the scientific path for the patient, you're missing the big picture.
Can I come to that, Louise? Because next week, actually, I will moderate the EASL Studio from live from Geneva, when we've just been engaging with WHO, and there we will explain exactly why we do that and how we do that. I think we just send out the promo for it. So next Monday, 7:30, but again, also will be available later to explain why do we do it, how do we do it, what does it actually mean, where do we want to go, and why is it very important we staying together on this.
7:30 a.m. or p.m. and on whose time?
CEST, so that will be Geneva time.
Okay, and is that a.m. or p.m.?
Yeah.
That's what I figured. So for those of us in the States, that's somewhere between breakfast, late breakfast and late lunch. Really well timed. I will put it on my calendar. I had not had it on my calendar. I will put it on my calendar. I would love to see it. Thank you. In closing, first of all, a little bit about 2024. Since I know you haven't even been through 2023 yet, but what can you tell us about 2024?
I think I'm very optimistic. I think I'm full of hope, and the way things go is positive. And obviously in this space, there are 2 drug candidates now engaging with FDA. We will very most likely have the first 2 drugs on the market. That would change a lot. That will bring a lot of optimism. If you imagine all these failed trials that really took some pushbacks in the whole space, and now suddenly we have it optimistic. We have a big drug-like pipeline, and also see the way that, now I can speak for EASL, but actually some of these activities are in close collaborations with all the other global societies and also national societies, that this community is actually coming together in a really nice, coordinated way. So if we, of course, should span from what we do from the individual patient, that's important, but how can we actually navigate the national states? That's what we do with this WHO event. It's actually, we have the health ministers from several of the biggest countries coming. If you have this kind of people in, and you can push the WHO through affecting what is actually the policy from the World Health Assembly, will make our work easier at our national level, because we say, okay, this is actually suggested by WHO. Now this is recognized as the non-communicable diseases. Okay, let's start do something. We cannot continue to ignore it. Where are these healthcare pathways? How do we actually implement these biomarkers, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? So I think we have very, very important but super exciting work. And the wind is not against us. The wind is with us. So we just have the wings out, guys, and then enjoy.
Point well made. I want to go back to 2024. But first, responses to Aleksander's comment. I think that's a great statement about the breadth of activity and the path ahead. Thoughts or comments on that?
I only have one comment on that, because in the European publication of obesity, the World Health Organization did use the word that NAFLD was the largest, fastest growing NCD in people with obesity. So the WHO have used in an official document the term non-communicable disease.
Please send that to me. That would be a great help. Thank you.
Yes, it's in their own document. I will send it to you. It's page 146, line. I know it more or less exactly where it is. They used it for the first time. Yes, you can have it at your table and say, you have used this term.
Please send it over. Yeah, absolutely. That's really, really a breakthrough.
So, and when you use it, please tell people one of the reasons they need to listen to this podcast every week is because they get chestnuts like that one. Louise, that's fantastic. Thanks. Now, have you started planning for 2024 yet at all? Or, I mean, I know you have location selected, but beyond that?
Yeah, every time you have something. So some of these returning events, so the meeting already, the learnings, how you actually evolve, but also for the NAFLD Summit, probably not going to call it NAFLD something, but something else summit, but around the same topics. So all these and then I think the roadmap, because we know all this WHO thing, it's not something that's solved by one meeting. No. These are long-term commitment. That's also why they should be rooted in the societies. So this is a roadmap we built that will take years, and we will not stop until we have changed the world, basically. And the same thing also with this initiative with the Healthy Liver, Healthy Lives that started, and now already 2 very high-level publications coming out. But that's also just the beginning, because, global challenges, they call for global reactions. So why it can be, as a leader, easier to just rule your own business, because it's much more different if we want to bring the whole world together. But if you can do that, then you can achieve so much more. So that I think is really vital to what we do, because this brings a layer to all the other things where we are local, we are national, we do our research. That's important. We drive our journals, whatever. But can we put this extra layer? And again, it's just to be clear that there's a competition with other diseases. So if we don't speak up, then the advocates from the other diseases, they kind of win the battle, and there we are the ambassadors or whatever for the liver. So that's, I think, important we have this layer, and in particular for things like this that really is a global public health threat.
And the line that resonates with me now, Aleksander, now EASL is pushing it, is love your liver, and we love the liver.
We love your liver.
Yes, we all love the liver. That's why we're here. So with that, just closing question. When the conference ends, this is a personal question for Jörn and Louise, and an organizational question for Sven and Aleksander. What will tell you how successful this Congress has been when it ends? What's the feeling or the feedback that you're looking for, or the insight that you'll hope to have gotten that will lead you to say, this was a fantastic event? Brave one, go first.
I'm happy to go first because it's so easy. You, of course, maybe want to have me say numbers. And of course, if you have a big party, you'll love to have guests. But what I want is the sense that people out there who are there, they are energized, they are optimistic, they are full of hope, they've met new friends, they've got new ideas, they go home, they do different things, they start new collaborations, they make new projects. If you can feel that, and that's in the air, so that you can feel, that is success to me.
That's a great answer. I like that answer better than numbers, frankly. Numbers isn't what I was looking for.
I can only echo that, because it was exactly what I intended to say. It's walking around there and having the reactions of the people there and sense how they experience it, and if it's indeed what I normally get as a participant from a meeting. If I get back with my batteries recharged, I mean batteries in terms of not just research but ideas and conversations, if I can sense that with the people I meet there, then it's okay.
Superb. Jörn, what will tell you has been a success for you?
I'm joining EASL Congress as faculty and presenter, but also as hepatologist wanting to learn more, right? And I'm going to be listening to non-NAFLD sessions to expand my view and get to meet colleagues that work in other fields. Just open to new impressions, new concepts, new biomarkers. And from that, I think it will be a very personal, how's the excitement with the colleagues that I speak to? How do they feel about the Congress? It will be a very personal note for me in the end, but I think it will be overly positive.
I suppose with the agenda that I've seen, I'm looking to take away the practical parts of what we can do now to help our patients feel, think and function with any of the diseases. And I think there's an awful lot of scope across that. Plus, I'm quite excited to see the movement to looking for liver health, the non-invasive diagnostics and how we screen and where we put that in. So I'm looking at that, what we can do now, not what we can do in 15 years with some of the medications coming out of some of these. And I think it crosses those barriers for me. It brings both sides, what's in the future, what's potential, what may never reach fulfillment, but actually what practical things we can take now to make our patients feel better and survive better in this current landscape.
So, as frequently happens, I wish I had given your answer, but I didn't. You did. So I'm going to give a slightly different one. Meetings like this, particularly during periods of tremendous intellectual growth and tremendous quantities of research, sometimes they feel like raging rapids, right? And it all comes at you at once with no form, no organization, and all you got to do is try to keep your head above water as the water swirls around you. And sometimes you feel the thing organizing, almost as if, now I live on the Delaware River. I have a wing dam outside my house where they organized what were once the wildest rapids on the Delaware River. So I tend to look for the wing dam. I tend to look for, has something happened that's helped us to organize everything we're learning, and at the same time have new ideas, which is great, but also a greater common understanding of what we're dealing with as compared to just a lot of data. I think you folks have put into place a bunch of mechanisms that should help do that, but there I think, to speak to the chefs who are making the meal, there I think it's actually in the souffle. Does it rise or does it fall when you come to dessert? When we gauge the height of the souffle, we'll figure out how well that worked, but I'm tremendously excited, and you folks have done a great job of whetting my appetite, our appetites, and I believe our audience's appetite. So with that, I will see you in Vienna, certainly, and let's all sign off. I will be back with the business section in a couple of minutes. Bye-bye now.
And now for the Season 4, Episode 21 Business Report.
Slava Ukraini, Heroyam Slava, glory to Ukraine, glory to heroes. Most weeks I record on Monday, but this week I wind up recording on Tuesday for reasons not worth going into. The point is, last night Russia fired 18 missiles, half of which I believe were their highly touted hypersonic missiles, and Ukraine shot all 18 out of the sky. Given that Ukraine has proven superior on the ground so far in this war, if the air defenses the West has provided for Ukraine work that well consistently, this would be a big boost for Ukraine and maybe a step forward to getting some traction in this war. Slava Ukraini.
Our EASL Congress coverage continues next month.
I don't know about you, but I really enjoyed recording this week's episode. Aleksander Krag is highly infectious, even over a video recording system, and his energy perfused the rest of us. I'm hoping we'll have him back at other points in this coverage. The second preview episode, in which we'll review what we see as the most important and exciting abstracts for the Congress, will post on June 14th. Stephen Harrison will join us. As you heard, I invited Sven and Aleksander if either one can make it back, and we should have more to announce on that in the next week or two.
We're recording again on Friday.
This Friday, May 19th, is the FDA Advisory Committee on obeticholic acid in F3 NASH. We plan to record right after that session and post on May 20th. Next week, our regular episode will have Stephen Harrison, and we hope at least one of his co-authors, discussing their recent Nature Medicine paper on state-of-the-art clinical trial thinking. You will be able to find a link to the article on our website by the end of this week. May 31st will be our follow-up reporting from the second Barcelona conference on innovations in natal care, and then we're into June.
This week's Vault episode looks back at one of the more intriguing conversations from last year's ALC coverage.
This week's Vault episode comes from last June, Season 3, Episode 32.3, part of our same-day coverage at ILC 2022. In Episode 32, Michelle Long and Zobair Yonazi joined the regular surfers in an extremely far-ranging conversation. This conversation was titled NASH is a Complex Disease, and the statement speaks for itself and for the conversation. A perfectly robust introduction in that conversation speaks for itself. So, with that, I'm off until Friday evening. Thanks again to Aleksander and Sven for sharing their enthusiasm about the conference, to my partners Jörn and Louise for helping move this conversation along, and to Jake, Magic Mike, Steve, and Eric for helping get this episode out the door. As I've mentioned already, we'll be back after the FDA Advisory Committee session Friday. That should post Saturday, and again next week with a regular episode. Until then, make sure to let us know how you feel about Rising Tide. Don't forget to send reviews. Stay safe. Surf on. We'll see you next week on the podcast. Bye-bye now.
Have any questions for the surfers? You can send them to surfingnash.com, and we will answer on the podcast or the website.